Unkulunkulu the Great One. Different versions of the Zulu origin story all share this theme. Life has a single common ancestor. The Zulu are a proud African people, famous throughout history for their fierceness and bravery in fending off invaders. Archaeologists tell us they traveled in the lush green land of southeastern Africa many centuries ago from the huge lake region to the north. Their creation stories have many versions, passed down by word of mouth from generation to generation. It tells of how the ancestors of all plants, animals, and humanities began from a single source. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Earth was a lifeless rock. But in the darkness dwelt a god, Umvelgwanki. His voice was like thunder, and who, when angered, would shake the world with earthquakes. Umvelgwanki created a single tiny seed, and he sent it to the earth. This seed was the very first life from which all other life descended. It landed in the soil and sprouted into a long reed. The reed dropped more seeds, fell off, and grew into more reeds. This continued until they covered a massive swamp to the north and the land called Uhlanga. At the end of one of the reeds there grew a man. His name was Ukukulu, known as the first ancestor and the great one. Very small at first, he grew so large and heavy that he snapped at the end of the reed. Walking across the land of Unthalag, he noticed men and women were sprouting at the end of the other reeds, and he picked them up from the reeds. These people were the first humans, the ancestors of all nations, and they spread across the earth. It was from Uhlanga that the ancestors of the Zulu journeyed south to the fertile lands they inhabit today. The Great One continued to walk among the reeds, and he saw very many forms of life growing at the end of them. He gathered the fish and flung them into the rivers. Fields and forests began to grow, so he harvested birds and antelopes, and they darted off into the world. He picked cattle so they could be used by humans. He plucked up a ball of fire and a round glowing stone and flung them into the sky. They were the sun and the moon, and light came upon the earth. The Great One also plucked from the reeds fierce lions and other beasts that would travel the lands hunting prey. He harvested magical creatures, some good and some bad. One was the snake-like goddess of the river, Mamlamdo, rumored by some Zulu to drown people, eat their faces, and suck out their brains. Another goddess was Mambaba Mwana Waresa, a beautiful woman who created rain and rainbows, and who invented farming and gave the Zulu the gift of beer. One of the final actions of the Great One was the most tragic. He plucked the first chameleon off a reed and sent it to give humans the following message: men must not die. By the words of the Great One, humans would become immortal. Unfortunately, the chameleon was slow and lazy in his journey. The Great One grew impatient and picked a different lizard from the reed. The lizard was fast and quickly arrived to give word to humans. But the lizard did not bear the same instructions. Instead, the lizard uttered the words, "Men must die," and so from that day, humans became mortal. It is said that chameleons change their color because they are so ashamed their ancestor was not fast enough to spare humankind the invention of death.